Now, mental associations are context clues intended to spur us to remember a certain thing. Now, you don't walk around thinking, hey, I'm going to buy some insurance and I'm thinking about insurance. No, that's not the way the world works. So strong marketing helps define the times where we want to be remembered. What are those specific circumstances where I want you to have strong recall for my brand or my message? And this is great because it reflects how our memory actually works. Our memory is shaped by our perception and experience. It is contextual. We remember certain things at certain times. And understanding that one piece of information can make your marketing dramatically more effective.
Yeah, this is an interesting finding from Kantar and Millward Brown, where it turns out if you ask people, what's the first airline that comes to mind? Now, this is a British audience, and so they're saying British Airways. Now, if you ask people of a quality low-cost airline, they don't say British Airlines, they say EasyJet. So you can see that the way they arrive at the decision and how they think about it actually changes the class of brands that they think about. And you can see that one of these approaches might be more impactful, and you might have a strategy for going after one versus the other. Maybe people don't say, hey, let me just think of the first airline that pops to mind, but they think, I want something that's going to be quality and low cost to get me where I want to go.
And we're all familiar with that construct. You're traveling personally, you want to get the family somewhere. All of a sudden, it's not just what airline am I familiar with, but how do I get them all where I'm going the cheapest, it's still high quality. Thus, they've defined a very specific context in which they want to be remembered. And that is part of the brand architecture. And that's important to build within your marketing. Define when we want people to remember this specific information, and that will help define how you structure the content.
Yeah, and this sheds a little light on, we shared the fact that people typically only buy a brand 1 or 2 times per year. It's because we experience many different contexts throughout the day. And, I know one that's very prominent for me is that when I'm by the sea, you need to eat seafood. It just tastes better.
More delicious. I eat shrimp when I hit the coast, man. And we have context for that shapes our memory and perception. And so building into that context is particularly effective. And we all have these. David, you've got one when you fly, right?
Yeah, when I'm flying, that's the time when I drink ginger ale. So the 2 times a year when I drink ginger ale is when I'm flying. I don't really know why, but that's what I do. That's what you're supposed to do when you fly.
My kids do the same thing. It's great contextually. So understanding more about where your consumers are coming from ought to be baked into your marketing. Understanding what they're thinking and how they make decisions. And we do this with lots of products. And I know you're a beer aficionado.
Yeah, I thought we went too long without talking about beer again. So here's an example. If you're going to visit a friend, you might consider this batch. If it's a Friday night at home, you might consider this batch. And what I have to remind myself is when I'm at that restaurant and I ask for a beer menu and I'm expecting them to, list off IPAs or some local beer, and then they start listing off Miller Lite and Bud Light, I try not to embarrass myself and go with the Bud Light.
Well, I am glad that COVID restrictions are lifting so that we can hang out, because I was not familiar with any of those beers that you were drinking, and I feel like I'm a step behind. But the important piece here is that context, understanding the place and time somebody ought to remember something, and then structuring your marketing around that. And this begins with understanding your consumer. And we can easily recall very familiar ads that have done an exceptional job of defining those contexts and building it into the marketing itself. Our friends from Milk built one of the most iconic ads from the last couple of decades that I know you're familiar with.
And that was the Vienna Wood Dance in D, one of my all-time favorites. And now let's make that random call with today's $10,000 question. It's a tough one. Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? All right, let's go to the phones and see who's out there.
Hello?
Hello, for $10,000, who shot... Excuse me?
Hold on, let me get some milk. No!
I'm afraid your time is almost up.
I'm
sorry, maybe next time.
got milk.
So the context here is obvious. They define the context. You can't have a peanut butter sandwich. You can't have cookies without milk. And by defining the context, it triggers specific recall for people, which is a great way of leaning into memory science.
This was such a great insight, which is that when you're at the grocery store, you don't say, oh my gosh, I'm thirsty. Let me go get some milk. Milk is something that you want when you have that thing that you really want, which is the cookie. So you don't remember to buy it at the store. And so now they're creating a situation so that you can have that association. So when you're at the store, you can be reminded of it and you can buy it.
Every time you pick up peanut butter or cookies, you think, aha, I got to go get some milk. Brilliant move by the folks at Milk. But we've seen lots of other companies do this to great effect. Like take our friends at Coca-Cola, for instance. They have done a spectacular job of defining very specific associations, and lots of them related to Coke. We think of having a Coke when we're rewarding ourselves, when we're sitting down for a family meal at a special time, sometimes just with a hot dog or even pizza, strongly associated with Coke. But we also have it in other contexts of it's really hot outside, I need to cool off and have something refreshing. So lots of different associations they've built, which leads to market share. And as you will see, creating number of associations is how you build market share. Now, this doesn't happen quickly. It took Apple a really long time to build lots of associations, but you can see the net effect as they become the most valuable company on the planet. And the folks who only have one or two associations are the weakest and smallest. So that you can see the power of defining the context and the associations with which we want to have with specific brands, product, or services. The more we can have and define, which takes money, which takes time, the more successful we'll be long term.
This video is from our webinar series, and you can check out intermarkgroup.com/webinar to watch the full series. We're a full-service advertising agency that embeds a layer of behavioral science in our creative. And you can check out the information below to learn more about us and to contact us to help you solve your marketing challenges.